as much as it may seem complete despair, well, they've got it through, they've done what they've done, you know, it doesn't matter about us, they don't care, and the things that you're going to be feeling to some degree or another. No, it's not over. Unless you pack up stumps, leave the country, which I'm no doubt some people are going to, but unless you do that, then this is still a country we have to live in. This is still a country that your kids have to live in, that their kids have to live in. This still is worth fighting for. G'day folks, Mark here. This is Wednesday, the 21st of January 2026, and yesterday the federal government put through both the lower house and the upper house the new firearms reform bill. Something that no doubt has a lot of people in a lot of despair, something that is once again trying to change our country and how the firearms side of our country. Once again, a solution to a problem that we didn't actually have, that's been forced on the people by government that aren't listening to the population. And I suppose the positives that you'd say out of this sort of thing is they've gone so fast, they've done so much in a hurry. It's obviously attached or not attached. It's now been separated so they could work out how to get it all through to a hate speech bill also, which is once again a solution to a problem that we didn't have, and now painted very much as going to make it better for the sheeple out there. It's going to be a better world because of the things the government's doing. Taking the guns off the streets, which weren't on the streets, they're out of people's safes. Controlling the people with the guns because they were the bad people. Some of the ministers are actually saying those things, even though the most compliant part of the society. And stopping speech. And in other words, controlling things that they don't want said, with a very open-ended thing which turns into all sorts of things, whether it's blasphemy laws or however you want to put it, while carving out spaces for, I think that still happened, carving out spaces for actual hate speech. So the likes of Islamic preachers and hate preachers, which everyone has seen, that's under, as long as they're quoting from the religious text, which would be the Quran, to the largest degree a book of war, but as long as they're quoted from that, then that's fine. So completely missing the mark, or maybe completely exactly hitting the mark that they were trying to hit, or the puppeteers that control them were trying to hit. I don't know. I suppose what it's trying to say is, as for where it ends up with, what the federal government can put in, I think is more about particular parts of basically what we can import into the country. They can't specifically ban things, but then they're flat out trying to get all the states to come on and go with their bans and go with the buyback and all the rest of it, that sort of stuff. Lots of complicated bits and pieces to go with that, and I'm not going to try and go through and break that. I'm not going to do that on the channel, go through and be a lawyer to go through and tell you where everything is. If you're after that specific information so you can comply harder, listen, I'm not going to be following through on that. I'm going to constantly staying on how to push back. And as much as it may seem complete despair, well, they've got it through, they've done what they've done, you know, it doesn't matter about us, they don't care, and the things that you're going to be feeling to some degree or another. No, it's not over. Unless you pack up stumps, leave the country, which I'm no doubt some people are going to, but unless you do that, then this is still a country we have to live in. This is still a country that your kids have to live in, that their kids have to live in. This still is worth fighting for. As to how to do that, is immediately all the things I've spoken about in many times, whether it's to do with the protesting, whether it's to do with positive advertising, where it's to do with newspaper articles, all those things. I'm not going to go through it again. Don't tend to get a lot of feedback on those suggestions. People tell me what I can do more. I got that. But the end of the day, unless our firearms groups, in the way of whether it's the sporting shooters or it's the clay target people or it's the hunting people, it's the farmers or whatever, as to the organisations that make the money from the industry, and that includes the importers and the dealers and the bigger networks and that sort of stuff, unless they start spending some money in some constructive fashions, which isn't just giving money to politicians, that hasn't worked, I might note, but unless they would start to find a way to start to put the firearms world forward in a more positive fashion, in a more attached fashion to our overall community, well, that is not going to help. That's not going to get there. Unless the people are prepared to be noisy and sacrifice a little more to do things. Now, whether that's protesting, whether that's doing more effort in the way of writing, whether that's doing more effort in the way of getting people into your club, I don't know what it is. But unless those things, I suppose the big picture would be what we have been doing hasn't worked. So doing the same thing some more is not going to work. It's not complicated. We have to change directions. We have to amplify. We have to do things in a different fashion. Now this is in the immediate. Yes, things have happened. And yes, this is and I'll go more into it, but largely fixing a problem that we didn't have is the main thing that's in play here. Punishing people that didn't do anything wrong. All those things. The other side to look at it is the long haul. Understanding that this can be a thing that if we do enough work as the community overall, and this isn't just about firearms by any means, surely enough people are woken up to what they're up to here. You take the firearms first, very obviously what they did, not what the theory is, not what my mentality says. No, that's what they did. That's the first thing. That in every level has been the first thing. So that's what they did. So about solving a problem that we didn't have a problem until they dropped the ball or created the problem, however you want to look at that. Then firearms first, and then also now we want to stop you talking in various forms. We want to stop and all the things that'll come in under that hate speech bill and the way it's interpreted side of things. I'm not sure if it's all the way through yet. In some senses, it doesn't really matter. They are going to keep at it this regardless, like with the voice. Okay, we didn't get it through, but we'll still do it in other fashions, in other parts of government. We know what they're up to. It's not complicated. They want to do that. They want digital ID. They're going to keep working at it until they get there. So the long haul side of things, so actually putting the effort in and stop thinking the fight's over now, so we'll just have to deal with this and it'll all be fine. They want all the firearms. Please wake up to that. They want all of them. They're going to keep at it. What's it going to take? Another couple of incidents that just happen out of the blue? Yeah, out of the blue. Of course, they're going to keep at it, and we're doing nothing about pushing back. So we've got to push back, and that is for everything. That is combining and getting together with everyone, understanding what's going on. There is the four-wheel drivers, there is the fishers, there is the farmers, there all this sort of stuff. We've got to work together, but we've also got to look after our own spot. Both things at the same time. Both things have to happen. The next bit I want to point about what happens right now and what's going to happen, and it already has happened, and it happens every damn time, is we start thinking our needs more than the others. We start infighting. We start, well, I'm an Olympic shooter, so Olympic shotguns is the most important thing we can possibly have. I'm a farmer, so farming is the most important thing we have firearms for. I'm a sports shooter, and what I do, that's the most important thing. All the thing, clay target shooter. I need all these bits and pieces. This is what happens every time. The FUDs come out. What's a FUD for people who don't know? I think it comes from Elmer FUD, but it's essentially this logic that, well, I only need a shotgun to do this, and that's all anyone should really need to share to protect themselves or to get the parrots out of the paddock or whatever. This is the only reason you should need something, is the reason I need something. And that means my need is greater than your need. And then you go in, those groups go in and talk to the police or the government or spend money on something in order to say my need is greater. But this is why we should have firearms. It doesn't really matter about the rest. What you're doing in that is throwing the rest under the bus. What you're doing in that is throwing yourself under the bus by saying that my need is greater than that need. Then can be used against you, and all of a sudden, no one's need's worth anything. The simple truth is, what's need got to do with it? What's a greater need got to do with it? There isn't such a thing as a need in the Western world. There is desires. We desire to things, probably if you come from Gen Z or wherever it is, and it goes where need becomes more than anything else. My need, I need this enough. That means that, I want this enough, and that's a need. That's a genuine need. Well, no, it's not. That's not how the Western world works. We don't live in a world that we need things. We like things. We like air conditioning. It works a lot nicer. We like being able to go on holidays once a year. We like driving around in a car. We like driving with power steering. We like all sorts of things. And they become a need. They're not needs in actual fact. They're desires, but we live in the Western world and we should be able to have them. There's no reason in the Western world, in the previous and where the Western world is supposed to be going, where there should be anyone saying you can have X amount of something, or you can have this or you can't have this, you need a genuine need. What a load of rubbish. It's not how our world works. It's a tactic that's been used against us to set us up. And then right now, the FUDs come out. Like I said, I'm this, and my need for shotguns, or my need for firearms, my need for handguns, my need for pump actions, my need for whatever it is, that's the only firearm you really need. So and they think that they're putting themselves forward in a positive fashion. They're just hacking away at the stump, hacking away at the base of the tree while they're protecting their arms. It's protecting the leaves. It's not going to work. We need to get together. We need to always, if you're throwing the question in any fashion, if you're putting it forward, it should be, you're fixing a problem that doesn't exist. We didn't do anything wrong. We aren't part of this problem. The problem is with what the government's been doing. Whether that's by intention or that's by inadequacy, that's by the lack of, whether it's deliberate or it's unintentional by incompetence, it doesn't really matter. The problem isn't with us. We are the good folk. We do the right thing. We shouldn't need to justify doing the right thing in whatever form we want to do it. We're not hurting anybody. We need to change the narrative. We need to focus on that. Not on our needs, on what we shouldn't be held against, what shouldn't be held against us when it's somewhere else where the problem is. So if we stay focused on that, don't be a FUD. The rest of it, like I said, long haul, there's all sorts of ways to do this. Said it lots of times. There's newspaper articles, there's protesting, there is the lobbying side of things. Listen, it has some value, but it's little value. It has little value in the world we're going forward. The rest of it, the people being noisy, the politicians start following where the crowd noise is. That's the only angle we've actually got in the system we've actually got here. The rest of it, like I said, there has been the lobbying, there has been the e-petitions, there has been the little bits and pieces that go with things, and we think that common sense is going to get us to the other side because this is a country of right and wrong, isn't it? No, it's not. You're wrong, they're right. That's how this country is set up. The only way you change that at this stage is fear of not being voted in. So you need to set up, you need to do the same thing. You need to do the PSYOP in the opposite fashion. The psychological moving of the goalposts, which we can do by enough effort, by enough money spent. So yes, our large organisations that want to gain more membership, that want to get into this and make it as we're going to run you, we're going to work it out, and we're going to work with the government, and we're not doing it just for our own benefit. Well, okay, spend some money on the population, spend some money advertising, spend some money in our side of the psyop. Get back to where, in other words, just propaganda, just putting forward, promoting what we do, promoting Australians and the strength and I suppose the goodness, the fact we're not the problem. No, I'm not one to design that campaign or say exactly how we should do it, but this is really obvious. It hasn't been done. So under the brackets of things that we haven't tried, there's one. There's a big one. The last bit I'll finish on, rather than on that rant side of things, is head a different direction. Ultimately, what we're really looking at is obviously a government that doesn't care about the people. Well, I shouldn't say doesn't care. It cares about the ones that are awake and wants to discredit them, call them the bad guys, move things away. It either works with a crisis or maybe creates the crisis, however you want to look at that, what a level that is, to be able to do things. That isn't because the general population wants what it does. Yeah, okay, a lot of them are asleep at the wheel or flat out busily working in their circles to make sure they have the holiday to get to pay the mortgage, to try and make it all work. Once again, something that has actually been put in position by our government in various forms and our institutions. They're so busy and distracted in those places that they're not paying attention to this sort of stuff. They don't really care. And they largely feel that, okay, guns aren't good because we've been told that. So, okay, getting rid of them, that's not a problem. And hate speech, well, as long as it stops the bad guys, and they're not listening to the details. This is what has been set up to some degree or another. Institution and government are causing this. Fundamentally, we don't have any protection from our government, from the government system, from our institutions. We don't actually use our constitution as it was written. It hasn't really been changed properly as it should do, as to whether there is the constitutional custodians, which would say we'd go back to the 1901 constitution and that fixes things. Then you've got to have referendums of the people and it's going to work better. I see a logic to that. I don't particularly think it's the answer. I think we need some form or other of getting some power back into people's hands. Now, is that a full republic, a constitutional republic. I'm not saying America's system. I'm saying a system where we reset things and we go through and give ourselves a proper rules for our government to run with, that they can't just run roughshod over. We set up things so that you can't just have a two-party system. Yeah, that can happen in a constitutional republic also, but we set it up to make it work for fit for purpose. We have a constitution written for a very, very different way of the world and a different way of people thinking. Honesty, Christianity, integrity, all things that our to the largest degree, our systems, our government and our institutions don't really operate that way. They operate in a self-righteous fashion. They operate in the fact that they know better than you, and the people, well, those are just the sheep that we need to herd in various places. So setting up something that works there. Maybe, as a couple of people suggested to me recently, as maybe pushing for that, is a proper Bill of Rights. Now, a lot of people say, oh, we already have a Bill of Rights. It's the Magna Carta, 1688, da-da-da-da-da-da. We don't use it. It gets trodden on all the time. It hasn't actually got one. And maybe there is. Maybe, yes, a proper Bill of Rights. Go through and do that. So we actually have rights for the people, where we can actually have protections, where the government can't just use a operation, a plan, a 50-year plan to get what it wants. No. Once it goes across a particular boundary, we can hold them back into it. I don't know the answer, but I would say that may be the other way to look at this situation. Enough of Australia is waking up, enough of the people are waking up to say, listen, hold the phone. No, where you're going too far, you're not listening, you're at least at the absolute best, you're using a crisis to push things through that people don't want. That's not good government. That's a government that thinks it knows better, and maybe we should find a way of doing a big reset on that side of things. Well, I suppose I'd say, listen, as for the main points I'd like to finish with, don't be a FUD. You know, this isn't all over. There's all sorts of things to come in the future. Yes, there's a big negative of how fast they've pushed in this fashion. There's a positive attached to that. It becomes really obvious when you push this fast as what they're actually up to. And you tie these other things in, and you do it in this crisis emergency format, you're jamming it through. It all is very obvious. We're awake enough now. There's enough of us awake enough now to help other people see that. We have to be thoughtful about how we put that forward, have to make sense of things, but it's very, very obvious to more and more that the government are starting to do what they're making it very obvious that they're doing things for the government, not for the people. Yes, there's a lot of people that are convinced of otherwise when they're distracted enough, but everyone that has an interest or a hobby or bits and pieces like that, there's more and more of us waking up. So see it as the positive side of things there, and then whether there's all sides of it. The immediate, keep at it, don't give up. That's part of the plan here. Give up. I've got this through, so I'll despair and I'll just get rid of my guns and I'll just give up. That's part of their plan. That's exactly what they'd like. Don't do exactly what they would like. As for the long haul, looking in the next election, looking at that sort of stuff, yeah, there is things to actually be working out there, pushing for parliamentarians to make pledges. Maybe there is down the road of really start the noise. Our community B and the communities that are getting hammered to start the fact of whether it's a Bill of Rights, new constitutions. Listen, I don't know, but there is stuff to talk about. There's things that are going on, and inside of what we have with the two-party system, or the two birds or two wings of the same bird, that ain't working. One nation, yeah, there's a chance. I agree there's a chance. There's 2 years of them spending hundreds of millions of dollars to convince everyone otherwise, and let alone how the election's going to be run, that we haven't had a really good track record at the moment. So stay vocal, stay attached, don't give up, don't despair, and it's worth some conversations. There's a fair few angles to look at here. I suppose that's all I can tell you for the moment. Thank you very much for listening. I hope there is some light at the end of the tunnel you can see and maybe feel a little better about the process at the moment. They've gone too far, too fast. It's waking people up, so let's use it. Anyway, guys, thanks very much for checking in. We'll catch you next time.